Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Crespo, and I'm going to be presenting on the topic of Constantine the Great. A bit of background on Constantine. Uh, he was said to be born circa 272 AD. His mother was a woman named Helena, who I will mention more about later on in the presentation. But a bit about her: she was a simple woman, a commoner, kind of like a barmaid or landlady in a tavern, and she wasn't actually Roman. But her life was very impacted by who Constantine was. Constantine's father was Constantius Calorus, a high officer in the military. And although not actually Roman, he was ranked Roman for the impact and influence he had in the military. Um, it was very unlikely to have someone of his status marry someone beneath him like Helena, let alone somebody who wasn't Roman. Constantine's father played a major role as in who Constantine became, and pretty much gave him the motivation to go forth and rule Rome. Constantius was an emperor, specifically to the West Empire of Rome. With him having a military background and being much involved in the politics, he was also very loyal to the main ruler of Rome, Diocletian, thus making him a great candidate for becoming an emperor. Because of all the involvement Constantius had with Rome's governmental system, Constantine was involved just as much. In fact, he was raised alongside Diocletian, who actually kept Constantine with him in assurance for Constantius's loyalty. Diocletian showed and taught Constantine many of the things on how to be a successful ruler, and learned many skills. Of course, as Constantine grew, Diocletian's views influenced the kind of emperor Constantine would become. A quote from the a quote from the book Constantine the Emperor by David Potter. This is referring to Constantine. He believed the emperor's job was to defend the empire from external foes while creating a more just and ordered society for his subjects. Constantine's views on being a ruler were that his priority was his people and the safety that he wanted to endure on them. He also made sure that there was discipline and that he was strong-willed when he would go and conquer other places. Before continuing, though, on explaining who Constantine was and what he actually did, I wanted to give a bit of background as to how Rome was before he became emperor. So, Rome had only one ruler at this time, and that ruler was Diocletian. He ruled from 284 to 305 AD. And in his time as emperor, he brought back an efficient government to Rome, which gave stability, organization, and discipline. Diocletian pretty much set the foundation for the Byzantine Empire, which would be the empire Constantine would be ruling in. With such order, Diocletian was able to gain much power for Rome, this making them very wealthy and gaining much land from all over. Diocletian was well aware about the advances Rome now had, and the enemies who would constantly try to invade Rome. He knew that by gaining more land and becoming as wealthy as they were an easy target for invaders. For example, the Persians would invade and the east side of Rome, while the Germans would try to invade the west. While being emperor, Diocletian separated the military from politics. In that way, he was able to have more order, and he was able to also appoint someone who could both follow his command and put order onto others. Diocletian would then establish the Roman Tetrarchy. Now, tetrarchy, it means like a ruling of 4 individuals. Rome was getting too big for one man to rule, so dividing Rome into 4 empires was seen as the perfect method for Diocletian in protecting all of Rome from invaders. During this time, Christians were also being persecuted for their untraditional ways of worship. They, of course, believed in one God, while Roman tradition was having faith in many gods. This created an unliking towards them coming from Diocletian because he was a man of tradition and he was strong-willed in his Roman ways. Here on the map, you can see that the warmer colors, the red and the orange, is the Eastern Empire, while the Western Empire was the light green and the teal. You can see clearly that it was divided into 4. Right here. And here. These were the 4 divisions of Rome, and this way Rome was protected from all sides, according to Diocletian. Yeah, as I mentioned, he established the Roman Tetrarchy. This meant, again, that each part of the empire he split, he would appoint a ruler that would look after it. The Augustus would be the one that was declared as the main emperor, and each would appoint a Caesar that they trusted to help them rule. Traditionally, with every Caesar, to establish the loyalty and seriousness of these positions, the Caesars would go and marry the daughters of the Augustuses. For example, Constantinus here went to go marry the daughter of Maximian. Even though he was with Helena, the mother of Constantine, it was more politically correct for him to go and marry the daughter of the one that is over him. All these rulers in the first tetrarchy, this is the first tetrarchy, the first 4, they were appointed by Diocletian. These were men that he trusted were very loyal and men that he knew were ambitious and tough enough to protect the empire from any and all enemies that would try and invade. He established the first tetrarchy with himself as Augustus and his Caesar being Galerius. They ruled the East Empire of Rome, and he appointed Maximian as the Augustus, and Maximian chose Constantinus as his Caesar, and they ruled over the West Empire of Rome. Unfortunately, though, the West Empire had the most negative impact from the wars that would go on, while the East Empire was the wealthier side. Diocletian was very optimistic when establishing this tetrarchy because he knew that wherever the invaders would try to come in from, they would be met by a strong leader with a even stronger army. He also believed that by having 4 appointed rulers, that this tradition of having the tetrarchy would continue on for years to come, and that it would be a smooth transition, because once the Augustuses step down or if they pass away, the Caesars take the place of the Augustuses. As you see here in the second tetrarchy, let me choose a different color. This is the second tetrarchy. You see that Constantinus and Galerius are in the position now of the Augustuses. And when they were appointed Augustuses, that was a smooth transition. Where the tension rose was when they came to appoint the new Caesars, being Maximinus and Severus. This is where the most tension rose. A quote from the book Constantine the Great, The Man in His Times by Michael Grant. This is from the point of view of Diocletian and his reason for the tetrarchy. He had evidently decided that the increasing simultaneous pressure on the frontiers from the German in the north and the Persians in the east made it impossible for a single man to dominate the entire situation. Now, before passing away sometime in 305 to 306 AD, Constantinus had named his son Constantine the new Augustus of the West Empire, despite the fact that the Caesar would be the next in line for that position, that being Severus. I mean, when naming the new Caesars for the second tetrarchy, almost everyone, including the troops of both empires, believed that Constantine was going to be named Caesar for either one of the empires. Him being so involved and having the energy to do so as well, it came to a shock when Diocletian and Galerius appointed the new Caesar positions to Maximinus and Severus. It was believed that this happened because of the close friendship Galerius had with Severus, because he wasn't really a practical candidate, and Maximinus was the son of Diocletian's sister. So Severus ruled, well, he was the Caesar for the West Empire and Maximinus was of the East. But Constantine continued to prove himself worthy, and he gained the trust of the army that he fought alongside his father in Britain when they defeated the Picts. He was able to show that he could act without mercy against the enemies, but also with compassion for the Christians who were being persecuted. Before becoming the only emperor, Constantine had to fight many battles with the men who he spent most of his life with, and defeat them to rightfully rule Rome. Constantine didn't officially become the emperor of all Rome until 324 AD, but was technically appointed by his father in 306 AD. And also the soldiers that he fought alongside with trusted him and were loyal to him enough that they also would call Constantine their Augustus. Now, I haven't yet mentioned who Maxentius is, but during the time of appointing the Caesar during the Second Tetrarchy, he believed that he also had the right to be Caesar. But he was completely overlooked. He controlled Sicily and North Africa and some other parts of Rome, and he did have the support of the Roman people. But he appointed himself as the new Augustus of the West Empire after Constantinus passed away. But because Severus was friends with Galerius, Maxentius and Constantine came together to defeat Severus and also allied with Maximinian, who came out of retirement to do so. Everything that was going on with trying to defeat Severus, he ended up fleeing because his army also ended up abandoning him from a bribe that Maxentius gave them. But he was soon captured and killed. This led Galerius to invade the West Empire and appoint the new Augustus position to Constantine, or to Lysinicus. So you have Constantine, who was appointed Augustus by his father, Maxentius, who appointed himself as Augustus, and Galerius, who appointed Lysinicus as Augustus. And this is all happening on the West Empire of Rome. When Galerius appointed Lysinicus as the new Augustus, he did this also with Constantine being Caesar. Now, during this time, Maxentius, he was slowly losing the trust of his own people for overtaxing them on trying to create a statue of himself, and he just started losing their trust, and Constantine saw that he was becoming weaker, and this led him to invade Italy. In doing so, this created the battle known as the Battle of Milvian Bridge. Now, kind of what the picture represents. The night before, Constantine saw in a dream where Jesus Christ came to him and told him to carry the sign of the cross into battle. He had seen in the sky a cross of light with the inscription, in this quote, "In this sign, conquer," unquote. He had all the armor of his men paint a cross, and he had new banners showing the Christian symbol. And he did this the next day after he had the dream. Although he was outnumbered by Maxentius's men, Constantine won the battle and he invaded Italy successfully. He then went to assume full control of the West Empire. Now, let's not forget Maximinius, who was the Caesar for Galerius in the Second Tetrarchy, not to be confused with Maxentius. This is Maximinus with an M. So he was the Caesar for the Second Tetrarchy underneath Galerius. But after Galerius's death, he was appointed to the Augustus position. Lysinicus, also being Augustus, he saw this and he went to go fight Maximinus for the control of the East Empire. But they ended up splitting it between Lysinicus having Asia Minor and Maximinus having the Balkans. Now, bringing back the map from the earlier slides, I'll show you the Balkans and the Asia Minor, in which Lysimachus and Maximinus ended up splitting between them. Now, you have all of the East Empire, which was rightfully Maximinus. But Lysimachus went on to go fight, because every Roman man seems to be ambitious. This is the Balkans, in which Maximinus ended up pretty much winning over, and the Asia Minor, which Lysimachus won or got split, which is right here. This split, of course, didn't last very long. They ended up fighting again, with Lysimachus being victorious in 313 AD. The reason for his victory was because he had the full support of the Christian people. He fought carrying their symbol onto the battlefield, that being on the armor of his army or on the banners that they carried. But it wasn't because of him having faith. No, it was simply just for getting their support. When he won, Maximinus ended up killing himself, and Lysimachus took the liberty to take it upon himself and kill every lineage that could interfere with him being the sole emperor of the East Empire. He went on to kill the sons of Galerius, the sons of Severius. He killed the whole family of Maximinus and the daughter of Diocletian. After this, the two sole emperors was just Constantine and Lysimachus. Constantine ruling the west and Lysimachus the east. Now, after all of this, there was a truce between Constantine and Lysimachus, because after all, they were brother-in-laws, but they ended up battling, where Constantine won over the Balkans. And this made Lysimachus angry and made his attitude very bitter, and he started to go against the Christian people. He would go and destroy churches and started persecuting them in spite of Constantine. Now, remember, Lysimachus didn't have faith in Christianity. He was just ambitious and obviously only cared about himself. And he only wanted their support. He just used the Christian people for when he needed them and completely turned his back to them afterwards. But Constantine, however, he did have his faith in Christianity. After the dream that he had and the victory that came from it, he converted himself into Christianity. And the things that Lysimachus was doing to the Christian people, it led him to gather his army and go and fight Lysimachus. Of course, Constantine was again victorious, and Lysimachus actually fled the scene, but was soon captured. Lysimachus promised to be a good citizen, and Constantine gave him that chance, but he soon went back on his word, Lysimachus did, and ultimately this led to his execution of both him and his 9-year-old son. After all that fighting, Constantine officially became the sole emperor of Rome, reuniting both empires, and he became the official emperor in 324 AD. Once Constantine gained complete control of Rome, it started to have more stability. He brought order once again, and thankfully he had the trust of the Romans and, of course, of the men that fought alongside him in all of the battles that he did. Not to mention his faith in God that helped him strengthen his faith in himself and to really appreciate the Christian religion and its people. He was an overall good emperor that a lot of people loved. And when I went to go do research and even read throughout the book, there wasn't much negative things about him besides that just having no mercy for the enemies that would try and harm the people and his land. After all that went on, he wanted Rome to have a different capital city. And that is where and when he created Constantinople, right on the side of Byzantium. In modern day, that is Istanbul, Turkey. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about Helena and the impact that Constantine had on her life. Of course, her life was very impacted because she was the mother of this powerful emperor who was able to reunite the two empires. Well, the four empires, per se, just because it was split in four. And Constantine never rejected her. He sent her to go to Bethlehem, and there she found pieces of the cross and on which Jesus Christ was crucified, thus people making her a saint. She was also a devoted Christian before Constantine was, and in Bethlehem, with of course the help of Constantine, created a church there. But of course, with all the happiness that Rome endured with having Constantine as their emperor, it all unfortunately came to an end. Up until he could no longer fight, Constantine fell ill and died in 337 AD. He was a very loyal emperor to his people and to his faith. He was recognized by the Christian Church and buried in the Church of the Holy Apostles in Constantinople. He was lived through his sons Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans. Throughout his service as an emperor, he had converted to Christianity, and he wasn't baptized up until he was laying ill. He left the impact of making Christianity the main religion in Rome, and it is said that he is the one who was able to, he was the one that started the spread of Christianity throughout the world. Unlike emperors before him who would retire so they could have their last days be in peace, Constantine continued to fight. In fact, he still had a goal to invade somewhere else, but unfortunately couldn't because he fell ill. But that's the way he wanted to finish his life, doing what he was set out to do. He never retired. He just stopped until his body could no longer continue. This emperor ruled for 31 consecutive years. And of course, his sons, Constantius II to be in fact, he is the one who continued to bring on the legacy of Constantine. Here is my works cited page. I recommend if you are interested in reading books about Constantine, these two books, Constantine the Great, the Man in His Times, and Constantine the Emperor, are two very good books that really go more in depth as to who Constantine was and on other rulers that impacted Rome as a whole. And plus the many wars and civil wars that would occur while Constantine wasn't emperor just yet. It backpedals a lot. I do suggest the one by Grant to be read just because for me at least it was a bit easier to follow than the other one. But of course to each their own, and of course if you're interested. This was a really great topic on learning about Constantine. And this concludes my presentation on Constantine the Great. I hope you guys learned something and enjoyed it. Thank you.